Welcome to the Peterborough Presents podcast series. In 2021, we worked with local residents and organisations in Millfield to restore a much-loved mural on Link Road, which is on the gable end of a house. The mural was originally painted in 1982 by Francis Gomila, who at the time was the city's town artist, but now he is a full-time practicing artist living in Greece. The restoration was completed by a group of Peterborough-based artists led by Street Arts Hire, Nathan Murdoch, Stuart Payn, Amanda Rigby, Tony Nero, Jason Duckmanton, and Katie Scott. Due to the pandemic and various other different timelines and working lives, the artists weren't actually able to come together and meet in person during the restoration process. Everything was done through email, WhatsApp, Zoom, but there wasn't an opportunity for the artists to come together face to face. But in 2023, we finally brought all the artists together, and this podcast documents their conversation. In the conversation, they talk about the original painting of the mural, the restoration process, and also what the mural means to local communities and the importance of street art in the local area. Okay, so first question that I kind of thought would be good is to start from the basics, from you, Francis, and talking about how the mural came about in the first place, and maybe if you can remember what life was like in the 1980s in that area too.
From the basics, yeah, I'm very basic. The whole story is actually up there. I was working as the town artist for Peterborough Development Corporation, and I was approached by Roger Brooks and asked me, I think this was a new road. I think they made this to stop people from just driving this straight roads to calm the traffic. So I think they must have cut, I guess, the houses there to make this. So the gable end was fairly pristine. And he asked me, because I've been working for a few years already with the Development Corporation, and I had done quite a few public art projects, if I would design a mural for the area. And I jumped at the chance because I was mostly working on new projects, and it was fascinating. This area of the city was always like a biggest challenge. It was the most diverse. There was a big adventure playground behind here called Hobson's, I believe. Very energetic place. I used to come shopping to the shops in Cromwell Road and get all kinds of junk there and things like that. So anyhow, the design came about very simple in terms of doing this mirror image of the street. So it's actually, I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it. I just came and I thought it would be nice to do a mirror image and show a different kind of time, a different thing. And because when you talk to people about art in public, people just want to brighten up the street. That's what they say. You just ask people what they want. They say, rainbow, butterflies, it's colorful. And I thought, there should be a rainbow. I should do a mural with a rainbow. But this time maybe the rainbow is real, but when it hits the mural, it kind of flowers start coming out of the pavement. It's a bit trippy, isn't it? And all these kids and people come to see what's happening. And of course, children are the ones that believe in this kind of magic, mostly the adults, and represented by the one that's walking away on the left is actually totally fictional. I think I got him from some other place. And of course, to begin with, to get kids to pose for the mural was actually just starting it. And as you artists also know, when you start doing a work on the street, people just think you're a painter decorator. But the minute there is a drawing and a bit of color, people start coming to you and say, what are you doing? And it didn't take long for kids to come and talk to us. I just met one of the kids. There he is. Look at this kid. But he's not in the mural. You had a chance. You told. I asked him apparently, and he said no. See, maybe we should add you now. And so the kids came slowly, one by one. Then Stan, the barber shop is still there, but it's called now Sleek or something, Style instead of Stan. I think he was from Poland, Stan. And he came out many times, and I photographed him. And as you can see, his shirt is actually flapping in the wind and his belly is exposed. And he didn't like that. He said, can you just... And I said, look, this is the photograph. It's like reality. It's like... So he accepted it. But one thing is you have forgotten, Stan had a little moustache. We have to do something about that. And the mural was like, I took the same as you took, maybe 3 months on that north-facing wall. Maybe in April, it was bloody cold. There was some kind of alcoholics living there who had fights, if not with us, with the characters in the mural. They would be like at night shouting. It was quite a lively place. And of course, the cars passing by, people passing by. The apple, which is at the feet of Stan, which I saw today, actually was donated by, I think, the lady, that's Doris, I think her name was. So everyone is kind of like a real character, and in a way it added a tremendous kind of belonging somehow, which I think is what made the mural maybe so mythological, because when I was first asked and told that they were thinking of restoring it, I thought, why don't you just paint another one, really, And I realized when I came and talked to people like kids and people in the community, that it had become something that it was irreplaceable. And if you did something different, people go, oh, the other one was better, or whatever. And I'm really glad that it somehow developed into this fantastic repainting of it by this wonderful artist. You should come and work for me full time.
We've got it on the podcast now. You've got to hold you to that. For you lot growing up, what was your connection to the mural? Did you have any? Or was it something that you found out about through getting involved in this project?
For me, it was the first piece of street art I ever see. So my dad lived in Hankey Street, Russell Street. Spent a bit of time visiting people on Gladstone Street. So I've done street art with spray cans for 23 years this year. And that was the first piece of art I ever see in the street before knowing where I'd be right now. So, yeah. So it was surreal to come back. And, that was, for me, kind of where everything started. So, yeah.
Amazing. Tony, what about you?
For me, the first time I saw it was really when it was in the decay stage, because I wasn't in Peterborough until in 2000, so I didn't see it until when really I heard about the project and stuff like that. That was the first time I actually saw it.
Jason?
Yeah, same for me really. I came to Peterborough in 2012, so I didn't grow up in Peterborough, but it was when we first heard about the restoration job, and then we didn't realise that there were these amazing pieces of art, and the other one that isn't here anymore as well. We were looking at the old photos of that, just blown away by the quality of it, and just we knew that it needed to be restored because it was just such an iconic thing. When we saw the old photos and hearing the stories about from the locals, wow, how much they meant to them. But yeah, that was my first time seeing it.
Yeah, the original photos were when they first came into the office and we were looking at them. Jason and I worked together. It was one of those projects that makes you go, oh my gosh, because I'd lived in Millfield for years, but I'd never clocked it. Or maybe I hadn't noticed it because it was in such a state of disrepair, or perhaps I just hadn't imagined what it would have looked like. Because the photos of it as an original piece are just so different from how it was prior to when we started it.
Yeah, it was so faded, like you couldn't really make it out at that stage. Like, seeing the photos, you wouldn't be able to tell. Like, a lot of that was there. A lot of the amazing details, like you're saying about the rainbow and dripping into the pavement and things like that, are just all gone. So there's no. We were revisiting it through the old photos and just seeing how much was there before. Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was because it was so faded. When we saw it before the restoration, we didn't realise how much detail and amazing work was in the image. So I think that's probably why you didn't notice it before. I think it was just weathered, and there was a lot of cracks, and the plaster kind of come off in large chunks as well. So yeah. And that was the most difficult bit about the restoration. Really, was working out what was there before. I think we were thinking that we'd have to kind of project it or scan it out to realise where the pieces of the puzzle go together. But then after it was cleaned and washed away, we managed to find some of the artwork kind of came back through. It was like the layer of dirt that was on there before washed away, and you could make out a lot of the lines from there. So it ended up being a lot easier to restore than we were kind of fearing at the start.
Yeah, that was interesting. The fact that there was still some pencil lines on the wall. That was really, really amazing. Didn't expect to see that at all.
Yeah, the original pencil.
Some of it was probably carbon paper because the figures were transferred from transparent paper and kind of like plastified drafting paper. So I kind of moved them around and decided, where the best place was for them, and then did a kind of Michelangelo with a typewriter carbon paper behind to transfer them. That was a kind of, and I think it's actually quite difficult to paint over it because I was using very light, watery paint. I was actually painting very light on the thing.
One of the things we found as well that some of the lines were different to some of the images that we were actually looking at to reproduce. So that was a bit difficult as well. Which image is the actual real one?
Yeah. So it's in restoration.
Kind of washed it back to a previous layer on some of the sections, didn't it? So it looked like the first drawing almost. So it was like trying to bridge the gap between the old version and what was actually painted, the final version.
It's a bit unfortunate that when I finished the mural, I think when I left Peterborough, I had a job in Birmingham as an artist too. I took all the cartoons, with the full-size cartoons of all the figures and drawings. There was scale drawings of the whole mural to the museum and gave it to the director then. And he took them, but he binned them because they're not there anymore, which is a shame, really. And I thought, someday you never know. Also I didn't want to carry all this stuff with me, but.
They would have been really useful.
It would be very, very easy then. Yeah.
So I was interested, you were saying about how you were adding things as you were painting, where you didn't go in with a final drawing, where you were adding characters as you were going along, like as it was developing.
Yeah, it's actually a sort of photographic mirror image of the street. So then you have a reduced. So I think I had to push it back to give some kind of pavement space. Of course, in terms of vandalism, the figures are there really accessible. You're not talking about figures that are really high, so everybody could access them if they wanted to. I try to remain this perspective. And if you're clever photographically, you can actually get this mirror image. You can even get the color of the sky in certain. That's Chris's job, to go there and photograph it on the right day with the right lighting. You can almost get a mirror image, of the whole thing. But of course, it's a different world that it's kind of like a Barbie world of 1982,
Talking of photos, Stuart, can you talk a little bit through about the process of getting the image kind of as ready as you could so the restoration could begin? Because it was a lot of work.
Yeah, so I think as you may have already mentioned, the amount of photographic record that we had was quite patchy. I think it was essentially made up out of a collection of donated images from the community. So they were all of different quality and obviously different times and different angles and things. So you had a few close-ups and then you had, some distant shots. Maybe there's a van in the way. So yeah, essentially it was just a process of sorting through all of those images, cleaning them up where we could, and just kind of mosaicing them really, and just trying to create a complete image, which we then had to color correct quite a lot because obviously all the pictures are taken on different film, none of them digital, I believe, because we're not talking about recently taken images. These are, however many years ago now, decades old photographs, right? So trying to get a kind of consensus amongst all of us as to what the colour palette was going to be was kind of derived from, as much as what specifically what was actually in the mural itself. Because as Jason said, when we started the project, before the cleanup crew came along, and by the way, that was all done under scaffolding, which was wrapped. So we didn't see what the cleanup job was like until it had been, all the scaffold and all the wrap was down, and they'd applied a stabilization chemical of some sort. that's when we saw how well it cleaned up all of that algae and all the film had taken off. But up before that point, it was like, you couldn't see. You can make out the flowers, you could see the rainbow, but like really there was just very little to go on. So yeah, we just had to kind of like create a montage out of the images that we had and kind of took it from there.
And why do you all think it was so important to be that accurate? Like, yeah, why do you think it was important to be as accurate and have as much attention to detail as you did?
It's because it's a restoration. Right, it's not an interpretation of anything. We're not trying to create new artwork here, right? We're trying to restore something that that means a lot clearly to the people in the community, right? But means a lot to the people involved, the artists who are restoring it. So, and because there's real, it's, you know, these are people, the people in the picture are real people. They still live here, a lot of them, right? So, because it's a restoration, it is so important to get all of the details as absolutely accurate as we can to the original, because I think that's doing it justice. It's not our job to create an artistic interpretation of what was there, right? That's, the artist has already done that work. Right? We're just here to give it a new lease of life, to give it some more time in the sunshine kind of thing.
And figures are hard, faces are hard, you know, recognisable faces are pretty much the hardest thing you can paint.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's not too bad.
When I originally painted the faces, I think the following day I actually received some images and the faces looked totally different. And you know, we were saying, yeah, it's okay, leave them, but I just couldn't leave them. So I had to paint over all the faces again. So, yeah. I think one of the things as well, one of our challenges was trying to keep it in your style as much as possible, because we all work in totally different ways. So it's trying to work it so that the whole thing still looks as if it's done, you know, comprehensively in that way. Yeah.
In quite a claggy paint, really.
Yeah, and you're using a special paint, not this sort of lighthouse paint or something.
Yeah, this is a really interesting thing here, because the cleanup crew didn't just like wash the wall or anything like that. Like they had a whole process to it, and as I said, it was stabilized. So it gave us a sound base to paint onto. But the paint that we're using we've never used anything like it. It's actually I'm a little fuzzy on the details, but the point is it actually bonds with the silicate in the mortar. So it's because it's lighthouse paint. It's not paint at all.
It's water-based when you're painting?
It's a water-based paint, but the way that it works is that it's kind of like you're adding a layer of render. It literally creates a chemical
fresco,
bond.
really.
Yeah, with the wool. That stuff's not coming off, like...
Anytime soon.
Yeah, it won't flake, it won't peel, it won't do any of that. It's like, it is definitely...
And is it varnish on top? Or?
No, it doesn't need it. It doesn't need it. Don't quote me on this. But the technical guys at the paint company told me, like, yeah, if someone spray paints on that, you don't need a protective anti-graffiti coating, because you just wash that off, because you can't wash that paint off because it's not paint.
One of the problems we had as well was that there was limited colours. So it was very difficult to mix the colours. One of the worst colours to mix was the colour of the flowers, the petal. We couldn't get that pink, we just couldn't get it.
So we just had rusty red.
It was
the only red.
The red was a rusty red.
Yes, because they're
It's a mineral.
they're mineral
base pigments.
So the colour range was limited to what the sort of mineral compounds you get from the earth, right? So we had this really sort of red oxide.
All the reds were very brown, weren't they?
They were
Very dark reds, so we had to...
But you supposedly just emulsion paints with some artists' acrylics on to get some of the colours, because what happens with the emulsion lasts very well, but some of the colours do fade quickly. The blues are not really that good, etc. But that's the north-facing wall, so I think that's why it retained itself quite a long time. Otherwise, I think it would have just gone in 2 years if the sun was on it all the time.
Maybe all the algae that was on there kind of held it together for a while.
And you've kind of touched on it a little bit already, but what was it like during the actual painting process? How do people treat you? What kind of things did you get up to? Did you get any interesting stories? Tell us some of like your best bits of the process of painting.
I think one of my memorable bits was a guy came along one morning, and he was calling me, and I was like, oh gosh, just leave me alone. I want to get on with this. I want to get some stuff done. But I went over and I chatted to him, and the guy went off and brought us all breakfast. But that's the sort of things people were doing. People was bringing us ice cream. There was a guy who almost every morning he'd bring us a cup of tea. So people were really absolutely brilliant after they saw what we were doing.
It was quite unusual in that way, because quite often if you're doing a mural, you do get a lot of not very positive comments. But like most of the people who stopped by said really lovely things, which really goes to show what the relationship to the mural was.
My experience was like that from the beginning. Like when you start, you're painter decorator, as I said, and then the minute it starts to get interesting, people stop and talk. So much so that you hardly got time to work. Everybody's stopping, bringing food, apples, and things. Sometimes when you're starting, the only problem might be that the local Bobby comes and says, I've got permission to do this, Sonny. And you go, like, what do you think? It's like if I was painting it white, would it matter, whatever. But the minute something starts, and of course in 82, murals were kind of fairly rare, so it would be, people would come, not just local people from other places, and photograph it, and it would appear in the Daily Telegraph. A trip I did to Peterborough, saw this mural, there's a photograph of it, or maybe an advert. I don't think this one was used in advertising that much, but the others were. But people do respond in a very, very generous way, because you would have thought also there would be a lot of aggro. I mean, there was a bit of aggro with the local dynamics of the people in the mural itself, because then the mural became like a target for expressing maybe some racial kind of tensions in the area. But overall, I think the local people were looking after it and cleaning it as much as they could. So it was very positive. I mean, I was out of here, it's like...
I think the positive response that we had while we were painting kind of showed how important it was to the area. You could tell that they wanted it to be restored, and they wanted to see it come back to life again, because it meant so much to all the individual people. A lot of their families were in there as well, so a lot of people were driving by and saying, that's your dad, and that's this family. And some of the original kids were there. And
I understand the two girls in the mural are grandmothers. Somebody told me that. It's extraordinary, really. It's amazing.
And Nath, how did it feel for you? Because obviously you didn't do the painting itself, you looked after these lot, but you did end up getting a little bit of painting done in.
Yeah, I remember the finish well. Like the finish felt like I don't know, it was overwhelming, wasn't it?
It was,
yeah. That last day we had some unusual music on that was going through all different multi-genres. The sun was out, and the finish was, I can't explain it, but it was like a moment in life. Yeah, like that's something happened.
I think
the last brushstroke on it.
Yeah, I think we literally all stood there, and there was just this moment between all of us where we looked at the wall, and it was as if, is it really finished? And almost like we didn't want it to finish at that point as well. It's really strange, very strange.
I think that's a testament to how well you all collaborated as well. What was that like, collaborating? Because you've not really worked together, all of you, or not in this way anyway?
Not really, no. We've kind of done projects like in a similar area, but not like on one piece together.
I mean, for me, it was good because we all know each other, but individually we got to spend different pockets of times with each other. I spent time with Nate on different occasions. I spent a lot of time with Stuart, and we spent different times together as well. And I found that was really absolutely brilliant, because we got talking about different things and stuff like that. And we all had different experiences at different times as well with the mural. So it was I think it was brilliant.
Sharing technique as well, and sharing feedback on what was and wasn't working. And I think the collaboration was a really upbeat, positive one. I think we all took each other's feedback really well, and it made it better, rather than kind of concentrating on this is my bit or this is your bit. I think we all ended up getting involved in most bits.
And Nate did actually get a brush, and he did. Take him a brush. Yeah.
I
that's
don't
the-
use yeah. That was a new thing for me. I've used a spray can for say 20 odd years. That I find it hard to just go to anything else. This is what I know.
That physicality.
Yeah, that's it. Not touching. I don't touch my surface. Like there's a physical, my can's here and the wall's here. Where it's like touching. It's like can't get my head around that. Like, so yeah, it was. I got a bit of tutoring from Tony and stuff. So yeah,
Because it's harder than normal paint as well, isn't it? So it's so thick and like the wall was so rough, so you kind of put it on claggy and then the brush would just wear away, so it'd be like a stub of a brush at the end of it. 'cause it's
paint
like-
was so chalky.
Yeah,
That's what I remember. It's like it's like a chalk
And that's
paste.
that's the point as well, because you couldn't dip the brush in water to loosen it up, because once you wet your brush, you had to use a different brush. Yeah, we couldn't get water in the paint at
Yeah,
all.
that was it. Yeah, I remember now. Yeah, water, bad times for this stuff. So yeah, you couldn't do any of that. So
It really is like painting a fresco. It's really incredible. I must try it.
when it starts
Because you
to
can only do it in sections.
yeah, when it starts to react with the wall, it's like it gets to the point where you feel like you're just literally plastering the thing. Like it's getting that thick, and then you have to rinse out those brushes. And we had like a whole circulation of brushes going on. We had, you had some washing, and then like you had sets drying, and then ones that were dry because. Yeah, as I said, and we had to be really careful of the weather because any rain that went on the mural, was it like half an hour? Like you had like a hour window. If it gets wet on the wall or if the humidity levels are too high, it can affect that chemical bond I was talking about, and then you run the risk of it
Shipping away.
So we were really diligent about that because we knew that every precaution that we took and every step that we made, that we're very particular about all of that, meant that maybe this will have another year of shelf life on it, So, but yeah, the paint was weird. To call it paint is not paint. It's a very odd material.
Paste. It was.
Yeah.
I've actually got a little bit of the blue left on my desk.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want to take it back with you, I'll give you it. If they let you through customs, you can have it.
After those great reviews, yeah.
Great. So the final question I guess I have on here that is to you all, but we'll start with Francis. Well, it's a two-part question, really. I guess, firstly, what are your hopes for the future of that particular mural? But then more broadly, what do you think the role is the street arts plays in local communities, and why is it important?
Well, the role of the mural is set now, isn't it? It's a kind of definitely a historical piece in a way, which much to my surprise when they contacted me. I think you sent me an email through Facebook, and I didn't see it for a year, a message or something. And then I responded to you. I said, "Oh, it's okay. You've been." I thought, "What's this?" And I think you were the first one. And I don't know when that was. What, 2018, 17, maybe? I don't know. And it's quite incredible that it's gone this far and that you people have done this incredible job with it. I wouldn't do it, It's like I did it, and I thought I'm not going up there again to do it. And it's really weird to be alive and seeing it, because normally you're kind of long dead when something like this happens. So I'm very happy with it. The role of public art, well, we're kind of seeing it here. I mean, when I started, the term public art didn't exist. The term community art maybe had just about started. And I was very inspired when I first came to London in '73 by the purpose of artists who are working with the community. I hadn't experienced that before. And the idea of being an artist seemed to be one to just get self-glory, get your work in a collection, get it in a big museum. But then the idea of actually working with real people in a real space is so different. It's so... it gives you so much purpose to what you're doing. And I was inspired by the early groups in London. There was one responding to America. There was one in America called Fine Art Group, and in London it was called the Fine Heart Group. And there was 395, and Colin is here, Linda. They're both, it was called 395, yeah? In Lewisham in London. And these people came out of Goldsmith and just refused, I guess, to be like any other artist. 395 was the address, I think, of where they lived, or where they squatted, probably, I don't know. And it was an inspiration to find people who were trying to use the skills as artists to involving people, to making statements, sometimes very hard political statements about nuclear threat and all this kind of thing. And there was a time, I mean, not long before I started working for the corporation, where mural painting was illegal. Some people had been arrested, like graffiti was in a way. And then it became, when I was asked by the corporation to be an artist, it was very much an exploration because nobody had done it, not in Peterborough. Some of the other new towns had employed artists before, Glenrothes in Scotland, and David Harding was his name, and he had come from, worked in Africa, a bit like a missionary, and he brought this idea of working in public, but doing a big range of things, some with community groups, some by himself, some with other artists. And I kind of tried that exploration. We did a lot of underpasses because nobody sees them, nobody cares, they're awful places. I worked with many groups with cadets and, I don't know, every group in Peterborough schools. We did this kind of projects. And they were very liberating because, nobody really cared about what the results was because the underpasses were such horrible places to go through. So to work above ground was actually quite a privilege, and to work on some real life projects and be invited as an artist to contribute, namely the Frank Perkins Bridge, where I designed this concrete relief, which I hope to do more of, but the chance never has really repeated itself because most contractors and artists involved in the contract of a motorway is like crazy, you can't have an artist involved in this because there's so much money at stake, and the timescale is so tight that the idea of having an artist, coming in, it's problematic. And I think the history of public art has gone from a community involvement to then more like an agency thing, where public art became an apparatus linked to real developments or any developments where they thought, okay, now we invite an artist or artists to propose something for outside of the building, or a wall that the architect wasn't planning would be there. So then it started to get a bit, I think, mitigated by another kind of client. And the artist was again pushed back to where the artist normally is. It's like, we want a turd in the plaza, can you do it for us? Instead of like, we would like to explore what art is within this community. And those opportunities started to recede, so much so that then I started working with an artist group, and we did the very opposite. We were called Fine Rats International, and we started to do shows that just lasted one night in raw spaces. The biggest one was under Spaghetti Junction. If you've ever seen a picture of this 32-acre site where we brought artists from international artists to work with us, and everything had to be there and performing for one night. And that is a different kind of public art. Just as exciting. I mean, some people say, unlike this shows just lasted one night, and they asked me what, after working a year and a half to make this happen, and it's gone in one night. And you go, well, it's a bit like a film, You sit down, film lasts 2 hours, but you can remember the film. You don't have to live it. So this is the other kind of side of public art. I think all we need is a couple of riots, and then the government will start. I mean, that's what led to the garden festivals in Liverpool, was the riots of the 80s. And I think it was, what's his name, Heseltine, who came up with the idea of getting this empty industrial site, and there was so much unemployment, and turning it into a garden festival, which also incorporated a lot of artworks. Unfortunately, that's where the tide started to turn in terms of the artist then becoming again a servant of or being patronized by the commissioning bodies, rather than central to the community as before. But that kind of emergency really brought out a lot of public money because they realized they had to do something about it. And the garden festivals then were duplicated all over the country as reviving dead industrial wastelands. And I think that's always politically how these things get done. When there is a lot of unrest, they have to do something about it. And it's kind of a bit ironic that the artist is there on the front line. When I went to Smethwick is on the outskirts of Birmingham. It's a really industrial city. It's where it used to be like the Silicon Valley of the Industrial Revolution, where everything happened. But when I arrived there, it was in total decay. And most people were unemployed. There was a very diverse community. A lot of the older residents or traditional residents blame the new or newish diverse communities being the problem. And the place I was actually, my studio in the High Street was actually featured in a BBC film of Malcolm X visiting the area, and he's actually in front of what became my studio. The BBC brought him on a visit to England, to Smethwick, because it was one of the areas that racism was rife. So much so that the Conservative Member of Parliament had a slogan, a public slogan, saying, if you want a for a neighbour, vote Labour. That was 1964. Malcolm X was assassinated 2 weeks after arriving there. So in that context, and in the deprivation and the unemployment in the 80s, to put an artist there is quite something. It's like, hello, I'm here to fix your problems. And this, it's a very weird way of being as an artist, to be somehow having funding, not a great funding, but some funding, and working on behalf of people who are really destitute. And the last thing they need is art, in a way. You kind of go, yes. And of course, you also realize that the art given as part of a bigger regeneration can really create a much better community, can communicate in a way that other things can't in some ways. So I think it's possible. I mean, I don't know what your experience is, but with Peterborough Presents, in terms of what the future holds.
Yeah. Anyone want to take that next?
Yeah, I will. I think we've got more public art in Peterborough than we've ever had in its history, and I've built a great support network of people. I have no idea who a lot of these people are, but I get the most wonderful messages, love and support for doing stuff in this city. And where it kind of changed for me was, it'd be about 2019, I think. I've done a couple of paintings down Taverners Road. There was, I was just painting in public, sort of coming to the public eye a bit, painting paintings in public, didn't think too much about it, just doing sort of stuff that I felt was right. But I got stopped upon painting on the end of Taverners Road, and a gentleman said to me, he said, "Thank you for making my area beautiful." And it's like we had a hug, and it was like really surreal emotion. And it's like, I felt so much passion from this guy I've never met, because I was making his area look beautiful. And it's from that point for me, it's like, I want to do art for people that because I grew up in a council estate at the other end of town. I would have never paid to see art as a child, or in my family, it was just no interest whatsoever. And it really got me thinking, there's a lot of people that can't afford to see art, they're priced out of it. So it's like, I want to put art in the street where people can engage with it. And then 6 years on, I've probably painted more stuff in Peterborough than anyone in its history right now. I think I have, yeah. I can say that, yeah. So yeah, it's and we're building upon that. We've got support here. We're doing some bits of the council.
You've had more hugs than anybody in Peterborough.
Yeah. It's been weird. I get loads of love, get a little bit of negativity, but generally we've got masses of support for public art in this city right now.
And how is it working today? Do you need permission? Do you need funding?
Yes. Permissions can be difficult. A project I've just done with the council, it took over a year lots of documentation to paint a wall. If I go to a private owner, I could paint it in a matter of weeks. So generally privately owned buildings are a lot easier, but anything that's, government owned, council, it can take forever to never happen. So they did ask me, how am I painting? So I was like, they're privately owned, so you can't do anything, and they just didn't have nothing to say. So, but then, I always say, like, read social media, speak to the public. People enjoy seeing it. People enjoy engaging with it. It's making the city a more pleasant place. So what is there what negatives are there? There isn't any. So the only problem I have is coming from a graffiti community. Some of the people in that community aren't the most pleasant people, and things can go wrong. So, and it's like purely because of that background. So yeah. So other than that, we're in a good place right now. So. And
is the graffiti scene quite alive and kicking as well?
Yeah, street art.
So you moved a little bit away. I mean, your work is much more monumental, less about.
Yeah. So now, I wouldn't call myself a graffiti artist anymore. I call myself a street artist. Okay. Graffiti and street art, two different cultures. Street art was born out of graffiti. Graffiti is the more rebellious side. Street art is art in the street. Graffiti culture is full of ego. It can be very toxic, very, very toxic. So I'm trying to distance myself away from it, but because that's where I started, I still get pulled into things. But I mean, in the UK, street art as an industry, multi-billion pound industry right now. So my friend 10 years ago quit his job, started one of the first street art companies in the UK. They did very well. That eventually collapsed with differences between them. Since then, there's a number of a number of companies, and I guess I think I created the first street art company in Peterborough, and it's our 8th year today. So 8 years in business today. But growing up and essentially tagging and stuff like that, like I never knew there was any possibility that this could be an industry. I never knew that people would want to see art. Yeah, the world's changed for lots of positive reasons. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Any final thoughts from any of you lot? Yeah,
I just wanted to mention Katie Scott, the artist who can't be here today, because it was the first time I'd worked with her, met her, probably goes for most of us, and Nate basically just said, I've met this girl, she's amazing, she's brilliant, Katie, we've got to have her on this project. And she absolutely was and is. And she very shortly after that went on to Manchester, didn't she? So she's not around anymore. But
Katie's, she must be 26, 27. One of the most talented people I've ever met in my life. So I met her a few years ago through a job, not doing any painting. She was fitting an artificial tree into a room. Through lockdown, she started using spray paint. We re-met. Within 12 months of meeting her, I introduced her to a guy who had a gallery, buying paintings from her. Since then, quit her job, moved to Manchester. Very successful female young artist, and just sort of taking over. But yeah.
What was nice about watching her development as well is that she was just doing dual tone work at first, and now the work that she does within a space of a year, 2 years, it's just amazing. Yeah. Really talented, yeah.
It's interesting also how graffiti has made that big step into the collection world and the museum world. I thought it was a kind of a conspiracy to kill it totally, because if you can, why do it on the wall? You could do it on a canvas and sell it. And it's sort of in a way become something else. But it's also validated the earlier graffiti. And those artists have become also extremely famous. I mean, I don't have to mention names to you, but so it's become a valuable in every aspect. It's not just public art, but it's also a rightful place in terms of art history.
Yeah, I get asked a lot of times, like, people always say about painting in the street, do you make money from this? And it's just like, yeah, we've increased turnover for 8 years straight, and the biggest company in the UK, a company based in London called Global Street Art. They're like a 7-figure, ridiculous operation. Like, they own the market, but it's like, yeah, they use spray cans and paint massive murals, and it's a big industry now. Like, so for the last few years, particularly social media,
People will always ask you that question: do you make money? Even now,
Yeah.
You're saying, I'm retired, but they always ask you, do you make money doing this?
Yes. I think, yeah.
Well, I would like to. I wanted to be an artist, but you couldn't make a living doing it. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, the debate I've had with a few corporate places is like, when you say you're an artist, they don't want to pay you. But it's like, you pay a painter and decorator, but you don't want to pay an artist because I'm painting a picture.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a trade the same as any other trade, but we pay pictures. So it's like, yeah, painter and decorators will pay them, artists we don't want to pay for that. So, but it's I feel like, as the industry's evolved, we've got more critics. Like, it's easier now, I feel, to get taken seriously. Particularly for us, like, yeah, we our growth rate, like, it's like people take us seriously now. So, but it took years of I'm doing something that I never ever dreamed was possible. Never dreamed of being an artist. Dreamed of, like, my last job, I did health and safety, and I thought that was my career for the rest of my life. And I was going to paint art at the weekends because that was my hobby. And then here I am, so yeah.
As a final thought, before we round off and let everyone, what would be then your piece of advice for anyone that's thinking of a career or paid stuff? What piece of advice would you give to anyone that's maybe starting out? And that's to all of you, but start with you, Nathan.
I always say, I've done a few talks to young people in the last few years, and I always say, it's probably not what you want to hear, but I say, don't do art to make money, do art because you love it. And it's like, if you can make money, great, but finance shouldn't be your driver. It's like, I never did this to make money, did it because I loved it and that bit happened. But if you do it to make money, you're going to fall out of love with it. It's not a job, it's a passion, it's a life, it's something you do. So,
but the other side of that is, like, don't give up. But don't stop doing it, because that's why people can't make money doing it, right?
Yeah.
It's because, this is too hard. It's risky. Like I've had years where I've earned, like, nothing, But like you said, I can't not be an artist. It's not like, okay, so I'm doing this anyway, all right? You do it long enough and you keep going, 8 years later, you're going to be this guy over here, Like, yeah, don't stop, don't quit.
You hear that, Nathan? I'm coming for you. All right, thank you, everybody. I think because of time, I'm conscious that I want to give some decent social mingling. So if you do have questions, feel free to come to this lot and ask them directly. So we're just going to wrap up now. Feel free to hang out for a bit. We're going to head over to the mural for those that want to, but most importantly, because we are a funded organisation, it'd be amazing if you could please fill in an evaluation form before you leave to help us get more money to keep doing this kind of thing, as Sarah dances them at the back to remind me. Thank you, Sarah. All right, I hope you've enjoyed that, and thank you all so much for coming. And can I give all of these a massive round of applause, please? The Millfield Link project and the restoration of the Link Road mural was funded by Arts Council England, National Heritage Lottery Fund and Peterborough City Council. More information can be found about the mural's restoration, the various artworks created through the Millfield Link project, and other things Peterborough Presents are up to on peterboroughpresents.org.